Five, starting, and it's recording. Five. Five, four, three, two, one. What the? What are you drinking?
Hello, Alex Simmons.
Good
Chris
morning to
Ryan
you.
drinking from a mug, a Vikings mug that you would think would be full of despair because of their loss yesterday. But I gotta tell you, I was pleased with my team, or my secondary team. I'm a Giants Vikings fan, and they went further than we thought. They were playing with house money yesterday, but the 49ers were very precise. I think they have a lot to offer in the next couple games. But my Vikings, God bless you. Off you go.
Scary stuff. Giants,
Second thing,
Vikings.
hey,
Wait a minute.
Alex.
Wait a minute. Wait. You got your Viking plug
Oh, I'm
in there,
sorry.
and I got my
And,
Mickey plug in here because I got my Mickey cup. Okay, there we go.
all right, enough of this Mickey Mouse
There's a
stuff.
crossover for you. Mickey meets the Vikings. Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Tell the Damn Story. Before we proceed, we started with almost a prayer last week. Worried about the soldiers, and listen, we metaphorically dodged a worldwide bullet. So prayers and blessings go out for the soldiers on all sides. Continue safety
Yep.
and for logic and reason to rule the day for various world leaders. And now,
There are sane people in the world. There are.
well,
Yeah. Every now and then they get near all the important stuff. Okay.
I'm going to take the fifth. No. All right. So, if anyone out there has been paying attention the last three episodes,
Of course they have.
you will have noticed that one Alex Simmons,
Oh God. Thank God there's only one.
creator of Blackjack, Ink Spot award-winning comic book writer, playwright, novelist, Scooby-Dooist, Archieist, Batmanimist, has
Left out Sherlock and Tarzan, but that's okay.
Oh, Tarzan, yes, please.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
But he has not been talking about any of those characters.
Oh, I haven't.
He has been, I can only say, obsessing. Classic piece of literature. Classic piece of literature called Little Women.
Yes, they are.
And he was very concerned about the the 2019 version of Little Women. Just for those of you playing at home, this is directed by Greta Gerwig.
Gerwig, yes, Ms. Gerwig.
It's based on the 1868 novel by the same name. That was when I think Alex was in 8th grade. By Louisa May
cute.
Alcott.
Cute. Yes, Louisa May Alcott. Thank you. We were classmates together. She was lovely.
And it stars Saoirse Ronan, one of the goddesses' favorite, Emma Watson, Florence Pugh. Pugh? Sorry,
That's what they're telling me. It's Pugh.
Eliza Scanlon, Laura Dern, Timothée Chalamet, Tracy Letts, Bob Odenkirk, etc. And Chris Cooper.
Yeah, don't forget Chris Cooper. We're going to mention him later.
Can't forget Chris Cooper. Can't forget Meryl Streep. Now, there were two others.
And Jerry Mathers as a beaver, but that's not important, right?
The 1993 version starred Kristen Dunst, Susan Sarandon, Claire Danes, Winona Ryder, Gabriel Byrne, Trini Alvarado, Eric Stoltz, Mary Wicks, Samantha Mathis, etc. And then there was a 1949
Yes, and I was around for that too, right? Of course, yes. If I was with Louisa, then I must have seen this one shot, yes.
Starring June Allison, Elizabeth Taylor, Margaret O'Brien, Janet Leigh, Peter Lawford, Mary Astor, Rosanna Brazzi, Lucille Watson, and Elizabeth Patterson. Now, to bring you up to speed, should you have missed Alex's obsession, he was concerned about the 2019 version. I would say he was looking askance. He was like, this, I don't think I was concerned that that the reboot would somehow defile Miss Alcott's classic novel, that it would not stand up to his preference. And after 3 episodes, I said, okay, look, I get the hint. It's homework. So I turned to just my guide in all things non-Teledam story, which is The Goddess. And
That's
I said,
right.
We got to go to the movies. And
she fought you every way, right? She who reads everything.
She reads everything.
Everything.
When anyone said, "Oh, Goddess doesn't read," she reads the Russian authors for fun.
That's right.
Okay? For fun.
She read all the labels on every product in the house. This lady reads everything.
She clearly does. So, when I told her that you were concerned about Little Women, she was delighted to take me. We did a dinner and movies so that I could. She's kind of trying to ease my way into it.
So she fed you first.
Huh?
She fed you first. Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah.
She was shocked that I did not take in libations before the movie.
You would be clear-headed.
I had to be clear-headed. It was
yes,
homework.
Absolutely.
So I will confess that I did lean over to the Goddess and ask for some cliff notes occasionally, but I got a working knowledge of it. So now we can have the conversation. The question that Alex Simmons has asked the world: would the
Can they do it again?
Little Women stand up to his favorite version? First thing we have to find out, Alex, which is your favorite version?
Well, Coach, I gotta say, as far as Little Women's concerned, no, actually, my concern, by the way, for all you folks who missed any of the previous episodes, again, shame on you. My concern is, how it deals with Tell the Damn Story, is there's good storytelling, and there's everything else, and literally, sometimes a film adaptation of a good story, a good book, a good short story, a good, comic, a good graphic novel, a film adaptation of that source material does not always hold up. Okay, that's one. Secondly, a lot of times when Hollywood, either television or big screen, does an adaptation or does a reboot or does a remake of a previously well done film, it really doesn't hold up. It really, and a lot of times because they don't have the spirit. They don't understand the spirit of the material. They don't have the heart of the story. And so when I heard that they were doing Little Women yet again, because as you mentioned, Chris, it's been done 2 or 3 times prior.
2019.
And I keep thinking there's another one in there somewhere. Not an animated one.
But that was called Littler Women.
Little tiny women, tiny girls, right? Anyway, Josie and the Tiny Girls. I just felt, oh God, what are they going to do now? Because a lot of Hollywood movies that are doing things that were classic, either classic films or classic books, they throw a gimmick in to try and make it relevant and to try and make it appeal to today's audience, and step all over it because again, they don't have the heart, they don't have the spirit of the story. So that was my concern. Why are you doing this again? Yes, there's some talent in there that I'm aware of their work, but And then I saw the trailers. And I'm going, ooh, okay, wait a minute. The shots I'm seeing, some nice cinematography in there. That's a strong moment. That's a nice moment. I hope these aren't the best moments of the film. And I'm seeing the whole movie right now. But maybe I better go see this thing to see if I have to eat my words. So, as again, I lamented to Chris on several occasions, and we both separately sallied forth. Interesting choice of words there. We both sallied forth to see the film. And I saw it yesterday afternoon without the Goddess or any other companion for that matter. I went to a movie theater at 4 o'clock. Excuse me?
There were no Sallys?
Oh, there were Sallys in there, but none of them came with me. I went solo. Now, I want people to get the picture here. I was at an AMC movie theater by Lincoln Center Saturday afternoon at 4 o'clock.
Yes.
Right? I do believe the movie was almost sold out. It was certainly a packed house. I cannot swear because I did not scan the whole space, but I think I might have been one of the few, if not the only, large black man sitting there by himself watching this movie. Okay, so that's the first thing. And when I got into my row, there were ladies on either side of me because they weren't together. They were just, separately had they come to see the film. And they looked at me, not suspiciously or anything, but they did notice me as I went to sit down. And I thought this could be interesting because here I'm going to react to the film as I will react, and they're going to react, and we're going to see if we're going to have a moment here. But here we go.
All
So
right.
I went to watch it, like I said, by myself, without libation, without dinner. And I have to say that this is not a negative first remark. I will have to say that the 1949 version still remains my favorite.
Okay, tell me why. Let's talk about the 49 version for a minute.
I'm and again, I think the storytelling was clearer, was the style and the process. I think I favored that style, because it allowed the characters to completely unfold before me. As I got to know these characters, I watched them go through this experience. And for anybody who may never have read the book, never seen a movie, and may get interested,
Spoilers from 1868.
I won't. Well, hey, there are folks that never read the book and never saw any
Yeah,
of the movies.
listen,
So
with
I'm
with all due respect, I think the spoiler period is passed by a century, maybe.
well, yeah. For those who are into this, yes. For those who, as I say, may go see this because hey, they're fans of Saoirse Ronan, or they're fans of Timothy Chalamet, or any of the others. As a matter of fact, one reviewer said that I think Florence Pugh is going to be in one of the Marvel movies, a Black Widow. And they said, "Oh
Yeah,
wow, she's playing this character as opposed to that character." So I'm thinking, some folks thinking, "Oh, Black Widow movie. Oh, cool. Who's this Florence? Let me check her out." So they may never have come anywhere near Little Women. All I'm saying is that the story from 1949, I mean, I should say the story that Louisa May Alcott wrote, and the things that the family goes through, unfolded it was linear, but it unfolded
in
in a
the
way that I felt
1949.
in 1949. It unfolded in a way that allowed me to get to know these characters, these people, as they went through this thing. It built and built and built. The wins and losses were were laid out before me in a way that I felt like when it was over, I'd spent some time with these people. I had an experience with these people, and again, it went from beginning to end in that sort of straight on style or fashion.
Right.
Okay, having said that, and
Yeah.
actually having enjoyed um, more performances in the 49 version than the 19 version. Um, I would still say that the 19 version did not let me down really at all. I
Okay.
do have some problems with it, but I sat there, I watched a movie. I watched a good movie. It was good to me for certain specific things, and I do not regret having spent my 13 and change to see it at all. And I'll go into it further, but I'm curious, to hear a little bit about from you.
All right. Well, I had neither read the book nor had I watched the 1949 version nor the 93 version. So I was coming in completely cold. What I will say is that I'm a huge fan of Saoirse Ronan because my wife has asked me, "Oh, let's go see Brooklyn." Yes, ma'am. Let's go.
Did you see Lady Bird?
I did see Lady Bird. She was hilarious in Lady Bird. She was heartbreakingly romantic in Brooklyn. And I'll talk about her performance here. Well, you know what? I having no idea what to expect, except for a colleague found out I was going and played me a scene from Friends in which Rachel and Joey switch books. Joey reads Little Women, and Rachel reads his favorite piece of classic literature, Stephen King's The Shining. And eventually they start like it's kind of a tit for tat spoiler, So I learned some spoilers from Friends because my friend was being so friendly. But I want to run down some Saoirse Ronan. It was everything you want in a book she put into her performance.
Mm.
I was rooting for her. I was pissed at her. when she said no to a thing I thought was just a slam dunk. I was proud of her when she started making her way as a writer, as anyone who hosted Tell the Damn Story would be. And when she broke down to Laura Dern, oh, my heart broke. So her performance, I'm really impressed with her in as an actor, excuse me, and would watch her
in anything.
In almost anything, yeah. Emma Watson, I'm so glad to be able to watch Emma Watson and to watch her as a character and not as Emma Watson and not as Hermione. That's a difficult thing to manage, and bravo to her. She has managed it.
Yeah, she was not Harry Pottering in this at all. Yeah.
She's an adult actor of significant gifts, and she underplays rather than overplays, and you felt the love, and you felt the frustration and the fear, and
the scene with her husband.
Oh yeah, that's real.
Oh
that's
wow,
real,
yeah,
real relation. And to be able to do that and bring that out without, gobbling the scenery, that's, to me, that's acting. I always prefer to underplay to overplay. So yeah. Florence Pugh, oh God, her performance was so great that I hated her. And I think in a couple of parts that's what you're supposed to do.
The manuscript moment.
Oh God!
I was ready to go for the screen.
Man.
I was ready to go for the screen. Yes.
Yeah, I was so furious. Tina was watching me, knowing who and what I am, and seeing it. I looked over and she had that little look like, "Up, this movie's getting you."
and then just not to give away, but I said the manuscript moment. So the manuscript moment when she's doing the thing, and then the moment before she confesses that she did the thing. When you see that expression on her face, that sense, oh man, it's like,
I've seen that face before, and I hated it then, and I hate it now. Yes.
Yeah.
And also she had this great, just clear-eyed assessment of women of that age, and it rang so true for 2020. They aren't as limited as she is, but to be able to assess a situation and say no. I don't. That's I think there's a lot of energy there for those who want it, and I was yes.
I think she plays Amy. I think for Joe and Amy, there are moments in the film where their characters, where the character Joe and Amy make very clear statements that absolutely ring true now.
Yeah.
Really clearly. And yet they were, you're right, far worse or heavier or greater obstacles then, but they're not off the board now. And I think, there was, and again, as sisters, saying what they're saying, and then the character played by Emma, whose name escapes me at the moment, Meg. Meg makes a statement about what she wants to do with her life, which also rings true.
There was a power in that is overlooked too often these days.
Right. Well, I'm going to quote the piece I'm thinking of because I don't think it's much of a spoiler. Just because my dreams are not like yours doesn't make them wrong. Less important. Yes. Just because my dreams are not like yours doesn't make them less important. A simple line with such gravity.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Eliza Scanlon. I had never seen her before on screen, and what I was informed is there's much more to her role and her frailty in the book. But with what they gave her to do, I think she handled it. She radiates a kindness and becomes kind of a conscience of the rest of them.
Well, there's a fragility to her character, even before certain things happen.
Yeah.
It's there, and yet she's this She's this delicate individual who does have artistry.
Yeah.
And does have something worth giving to the world. And so you're aware of that, and then all these other things happen, and it's
So there was a funny kind of cheering for your own home team moment there in the movie where a character describes her as the best of them, and I knee jerk said no because I was cheering for Joe. But then, in especially on the drive home and that kind of stuff, I see how many things, especially in this era, don't listen to what people say. Watch what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And if you watch what she does, yes.
Well, I'll back you up on that, but I'll let you finish what you're going to say.
Well, I'm going to move on to Laura Dern. Laura Dern, I've seen Laura Dern in so many things that I always see.
She plays a mother, by the way, folks.
I'm sorry, the mother.
Yes, she plays a mother.
Is it the mom or the aunt? I forget.
No, Laura Dern is the mother. What's her name?
Right.
Meryl Streep. I'm sorry. What's her name? Whoa. Ooh. Boo hiss. Sorry.
Everybody in the world, you heard him say that.
Meryl, I'm sorry. I even met you. You're good people. You know where I'm coming from. I'm sorry about that, sis. Okay.
Meryl's going to show up at your door.
She's going to kick my butt. Oh, wow.
She's going to go.
She's sitting right there. I was nice to your son. I was nice to your son when I met him, and look what you did to me on the air even. Okay, I'm sorry.
So Laura Dern, so often I see her as, she's for me one as actors and as Hollywood stars, and she's right on the edge and just kind of 1 foot over on the Hollywood star. But I was always aware of her as Laura Dern, but I was able to enjoy the performance. So again, that's a level of commitment. And since you dissed Meryl, that we're going to talk about.
It was intentional. It was
disrespected Meryl, and Meryl.
It was just, it was a senior moment. That's all. It was just a senior moment.
She's a senior too. She's going to go. Mm-mm.
Yeah, I know. She's not going to accept that. Yeah.
So Meryl is the actor, right? But also she's the movie star, right? And you never don't recognize that it's Meryl Streep.
Yeah. Oh, what did you just do? Okay, go ahead.
The power of her chops, take you way back, take you into the story. So God bless them. Timothy Chalamet, the goddess is a big fan of his. I think I want to sit him down for a couple of slices of Sicilian pizza. Boy, that's a skinny guy. But his acting is great. He was, and he never got in the way of anyone else. He accented and brought the stories along, served the story, and that's where you get my most respect, and that's what he did.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Just in terms of the rhythm of this dance that we're on right now, I didn't know. I was just thinking, I'd like to, if you don't mind, I'd like to say a couple of things that I had problems with.
Well, I got so that we can then.
No, because I was thinking maybe we want to swing back to the positives after I mentioned.
Well,
you don't care.
General positives, but
okay.
I just want to say Chris Cooper.
Yeah.
Always great to see him.
Yes.
Always great to see him. Always know it's Chris Cooper, or I'm struggling to remember his name. But then his performance sucks me in. God bless him, he did it again, and I was shocked. Even though I knew Bob Odenkirk from the credits, I was shocked when he showed up. And again, he is such a subtle actor that he brings you in. So overall, beautiful. There's a few people we didn't mention, but
not taking anything away from their work.
Now you want to go about some problems, and then I'll react to that.
Okay, so Ms. Gerwig, I don't know her work beyond this. I know of her work, but I've not seen any of it. I know that she did Lady Bird, if I remember right. She directed that. I'm impressed that she wrote and directed this. I think she did a really good job in the writing. I think overall the directing is really fine. And still, speaking for myself, I had a couple of hiccups with certain directorial choices that sort of caused me to sort of trip over my feet as I flowed through the story. Just a stumble for a moment, and then I'm upright again. One of them was what felt like arbitrary breaking of the fourth wall. Where
would you see that?
Excuse me?
Where did you see that?
When the characters, and I believe there were 3 or 4 of them, who throughout the film at only certain points one person would step forward and talk to the audience, talk to us, the viewers of the film.
Oh, yes, 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 yes,
Yeah,
yes.
and there was
Again,
to me, it felt like there was no particular rhythm to that. I'd almost forgotten it had happened, and then it happened again,
yeah.
and then I completely forgot that it happened. There it was again. It was each time it was a little jarring to me.
Yeah.
So that was something I didn't understand that choice, and I really felt for me it interrupted the I was in the world, and suddenly this person's talking to me, and it didn't bring me into the world further. It made me stop and realize I'm watching a movie, or this
That's,
actor's talking to me.
I don't want to diss it too much, but that for me is always the unforgivable sin.
Mm.
Somebody out of the story, unforgivable sin.
Well, that's what it did to me. I don't know. Maybe it
Yeah.
didn't bother anybody else. The other thing that threw me again, me, and I have no problem with like Memento and some of the other films that I've seen where the we're in the present, then we're the past, and then we're somewhere else, and we got to catch up to know. Oh, we're in the present now. I've seen that. I've taken that ride in certain other movies and stories, and it's fine. Except there were several places here where it once again threw me. It wasn't like, oh, that's where. No, it was like, what? Like I wasn't really sure the father had actually come back until I realized, oh, the father's actually back. He's really back. Because she was having a dream one moment, and then so there was that, and then there were two other moments where I would not say it's. I don't mind flashbacks, but I
Right.
felt for some reason the transitions between the present and the flashback somehow didn't feel as smooth as so much of the film did,
Yeah.
as really again pulling me in, taking me along. The cinematography, the costuming, the acting, absolutely. A lot of the characters really they brought their A game, and I was there, and then suddenly I wasn't. And so those things bother, which is why the 49 version won out, more so over this, was those two things.
I would say this about that. Um, a lot of things that you're talking about, it would have stopped me in my tracks had I not been able to lean over to the goddess and get clarity. You know,
Ah,
uh,
okay.
I needed cliff notes for some of those things. I left thinking that this may be a movie made for those who really love the book or who have watched, the few previous movies and really know it well, because there's so much energy. The Little Women, the girls, just even the very first time you see them, they're bustling
Yeah, and I
and
love
taking
that.
over
That
all
was
the rooms,
great.
the energy and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But you don't get a clear who's who. You kind of get it through osmosis, and my wife was able to hit the ground running much more than I was, because she knew the story so well. So I think those of you who are fans of the book and fans of maybe the other versions of movies will really enjoy this, because none of that will throw you. Some of the stuff threw me, and the going back and forth. I would lean over and say to the goddess, this 7 years ago. Is this present time? I mean, their present time, like back and forth,
Hmm.
just to be sure. Also, there are a couple of things that were, this is going to work cinematically rather than serving the story. I'll just say the kitchen chair, right? That was,
Yeah.
both times was a cinematic moment.
Mm.
Um, and it worked. And if you really know the story, but there were those couple of times where I consciously was able to think about what I thought about the story rather than experiencing the story.
Mm.
Now, God bless her, she's accomplished. Um, but if you look at this one and you look at Ladybird, for for my money, and who cares? I'm just some dude. But Ladybird is seamless from beginning to end. You never get knocked out of the story. It's
Hmm.
intoxicating in its success of weaving the story. And maybe it was because, well, I didn't know anything about Lady Bird either. I just went in, Tina wanted to watch, and boom.
Hmm.
And she didn't do Brooklyn, but that's a Saoirse Ronan vehicle. And I sat down and was entranced by a movie that I normally wouldn't watch, um, from beginning to end. And that is the You know,
I would
it's
say,
hard to do, and I think
yeah.
she did. I don't know. I think I'd give her about a B, maybe a B plus or something like that, because I
I would
love
I would
so many
definitely
of
do.
those actors' performances.
I would do a B plus. Yeah, absolutely. And I would also say this. And again, folks, again, applying this to the context of storytelling and being writers and creatives, how well you define your characters, how well they come across, how engaging and mesmerizing they are, that the whole thing pulls you in and you're living that experience. That's a part of your goal. And so what we're discussing here, as two old dudes, as two guys, we're talking about a movie that is about these women who go through life and go through a life experience. I was, again, totally caught up in it. Would I go watch a shoot 'em up? Absolutely. Have seen quite a few. Plan to go see Star Wars. All that good stuff. But the bottom line is, a good story is a good story. I would say that the sequence at the beginning of the film, because remember, I read the book when I was a teenager, back during the Covered Wagon days, and I was also I think I saw the '93 movie, not in the theater. I think I saw it on television. So again, years ago. So I was not immediately clear on which actress was playing which part when the movie started. But
Right.
what I enjoyed was watching that family. I
Yeah.
was introduced to this family, and there's a mother and there are these girls, and how do they all connect, and what's the energy between them, and what's the reality they live. Like someone was saying, one of the reviewers was saying that it's a period piece. I mean, it takes place during the Civil War,
Right.
but they don't spend hours creating the Civil War so you believe that that's when the story is taking place. They're
No.
showing you life at that time period, and so the Civil War is affecting their lives, but it's about their lives at that moment in that place. And I felt that period. I felt it was I felt the era. I felt what they were dealing with, and again, without giving out a spoiler, what Beth goes through and why she winds up and anybody who knows the story knows that at some point this character becomes unhealthy. Why she becomes unhealthy
Spoilers. Okay.
is a tearjerker, because you think why she did what she did and how this was the outcome. Wow. So to me it was, get to know these characters, get to know these people, and then take this ride with them, take this journey with them,
Right.
and see how they continue to connect or oppose each other at
Hmm.
points, the way we do in life. And I never had a sibling, but having three children, watching them grow up, I get it. I totally get it. I was an only kid, so the world was all about me. But seeing these three interact, I mean, seeing my three interact, it was, again, a normal part of life. And watching this movie and watching these characters interact, it was. And then I'll say one more thing about the acting. Um, I was rooting for Timothy Chalamet, playing, I think his character's named Teddy or Laurie, depending on
Both. Yeah.
yeah,
Depending on
who's
who.
calling him at the time, who's talking to him at the time. But he does remind, someone else said this, he does remind me of a little bit, just a little bit, of a James Dean or an early Marlon Brando kind of styling. He's a little bit of the rebel, a little bit outside the mix kind of character there. He's not like any of the other guys in the film. He's not like any of the other male characters in the film.
Right.
He's his own little individual who you can tell has a lot going on for him, but also isn't sure of just what he wants to do with that, if you want to call it that, his own personal power. Where does he fit? And he's got a goal that he's going for that he's not clear how he's going to get it. And so this makes him an interesting character to watch. So I agree with you. I think a lot of the performances were top notch. Everybody brought their A game. And Chris Cooper, last thing I'll say, and then we'll go back, send the ball back on your side of the net. Chris Cooper. Chris Cooper, yes, we both have watched him in numerous things. For personal reference to the audience, you might have seen him in the first two Bourne Identity, Bourne Supremacy films. He's the CIA guy there. He's in a couple of other films, and my personal favorite Chris Cooper movie was Lone Star.
Yeah, he's great in that movie.
Yeah, that's a great movie. That's a great movie. It's back in 1997, I think, or 93,
Yeah,
something like that. So I watched this guy over the years, and you're right. Every time he steps into a role, you facially recognize it's Chris Cooper. There's an energy that is Chris Cooper, but then the character becomes engaging,
yeah,
and yeah, and watching the character he plays in this film, this man who, at one moment appears gruff and all powerful, and another moment so human. I think, yeah, those are great, great, great
yeah.
moments that he
Yeah.
touched on brilliantly.
If it's okay with you, I'd like to use Chris Cooper and Timothy Chalamet and the ladies to get into our get your
Yes.
right on, right?
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
One of the things that this cast did so well was its job, right? The job of an actor is to serve the script, to serve the story.
Hmm.
And because they were so completely their character, you know, Chris Cooper, was it Shyamalan, Saoirse Ronan, Emma Watson, Florence Pugh,
Pew. Yeah.
Eliza Scanlon, Laura Dern, even Odenkirk. Bob Odenkirk is, limited part, but
And
we
one of them,
attest his Odenkirkness in
right.
some.
And Francois wasn't, I think it's,
Right.
yeah, another one of the actors.
Yeah, but and Meryl, of course.
Oh,
Meryl.
yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you, Meryl.
But they are so committed that you get to watch the character, not the performance. The performance is what is moving you, right?
Hmm.
And it allows us to talk about two levels of the first of our get your right on topics, which is subtext. An actor's subtext is what goes on between the characters that's unspoken,
That's
right?
right.
It has to be in the writing, right? You have to have the characters so clear that the dynamics between the characters drive the story and all that sort of stuff. But the actors, if they're acting the moment, allow the subtext in because they're so committed to the character and so committed to the moment that you get to know, oh, these two characters have been knocking heads or have had conflicting agendas for this long and all that sort of stuff. And I think that's the enduring power of that book. Excuse me, that book. Definitely that
Hey,
novel.
read the book too.
And and this movie, you may prefer the 49. Others are going to say, wow, especially if they haven't seen anything else, because, this generation may have read Little Women, but they may not have seen 1949 or the equally ancient 1993, right? Because anything that's not in their lifetime is ancient history, right? For these
2
people,
weeks ago is for some of us ancient
well,
history.
for the generation that's that teenagers and above now, that you really go from like 12 to maybe 20, maybe
Hmm.
22 at this point. Yeah, 22, maybe even 23. 9/11 is a history book thing.
Hmm.
I mean, my
Hmm.
sons were born in 95. They were 5 when it happened. So they have unclear memories of it.
Hmm.
So anything after that, it's as personally impactful as Martin Luther King or George Washington or World War II. It's all history book
Hmm.
stuff. So there's no reason why a 93 or a 49 would hit them as viscerally. So let us talk about subtext, right? The subtext of heartbreak in
Hmm.
Little Women, of inequality, uh, of dreams and dreams dashed, of trying to find a way in the world that doesn't always allow you a way, really strong. Now, there are a handful of speeches or monologues about those things,
Hmm.
but that's the exception. And that's while those are performed so well, it's the interaction between the characters where I think the more successful subtext come out. And in your writing, everything we talked about last week is what gets you to a point of subtext, right?
Hmm.
If you have to point at it, it's no longer sub, it's text,
Yep.
right? But if your characters are so strong and you know what moves them and what repels them, then you can start working on subtext and all that sort of stuff.
I would just quickly throw in what may or may not be a revelation for some, but something to think about. It is especially difficult for actors in film to play subtext or even to play some of the more emotional connections, pro or con, love you or hate you kind of thing. When you think about the fact that they're not always facing the character they're interacting with. When you see actors on stage, they're opposite each other. They're standing right there looking at one another, delivering the lines. And again, it's give and take. When you got good actors on stage, they are giving out that energy. They're saying those lines. They're committed to the characters, and they're playing off each other.
Yeah.
But a lot of times in film, the actor you're playing opposite in certain shots may not even be in the room.
Yeah.
And still you got to play that intent and that subtext and those emotions and all of that. So, once again, being clear as a writer, what is going on here in this moment really supports your actors, especially if, you're talking about a film.
Yeah. And how would you term that in terms of, say, fiction writing?
Well, fiction writing, again, to me, if you're writing a book, you're writing, something where people are going to sit and read or even if it's going to be animated for that matter, because again, they're not really looking at each other. That's a series of paintings or a series of ones and zeros. But for fiction writing, I think that again, it goes back to knowing your characters and knowing what are you trying to say with this story. Because sometimes writers will have the big picture, they'll have the big idea, and they're writing totally to the big idea, and yet the characters come across as one-dimensional. And that's because at some point you're not looking at who they are deeper than the surface, and subsequently you're not getting to any subtext. But once you know who these characters are and you know what they're going for and what this story is about and what you're trying to say with it, then as they become more engaging, more real to you, you understand what's going on with each one of them, and you know where they're actually poking one another or where they're holding back because they don't want to say such and such in front of so-and-so or they're ashamed of. Again, like going back to Little Women, the character Beth does not want to, she can play piano beautifully. She doesn't like to play in front of anybody. She's very shy, and she's painfully shy, and it comes out even further into the film how painfully shy she is when she's given this great opportunity. So again, that could have very easily been, here's this great opportunity. Oh, thank you very much. And off she, but no, we're playing how gentle and fragile is this human being. And yet she has so much to give, but it's so painful for her to give it beyond the family and herself. And so that to me is a nice little, we don't make a big deal out of it. It's not discussed throughout the movie, but it comes in there in subtle ways throughout. And I think that's understanding your character, and that's also telling the story on more than one level.
Right. And I think that kind of material, the subtext, is what you wind up chewing on or discussing after the movie, after the book.
Yep.
Sure, the first 5 or 10 minutes are, and then this happened, and then that happened. And then if the conversation goes, and if you're with the people who will extend a conversation like that, then it starts talking about what it was really about. And that comes from, the actions and the motivations and all the unsaid stuff. It's so frustrating for an aspiring writer to hear other writers say, well, it's the unsaid stuff, it's the unwritten stuff. Well, what the hell? I'm a writer. How am I going to write the unwritten stuff, right?
Yeah, if I don't write it, it's not written, but it's there. What? Yeah.
Well, and the thing to offer there is to quote Stephen King, and 1,000 other writers. If you want to write, read everything all the time. And I would say that extends to conscious viewing of film or TV, right?
I was going to say, yeah, exactly.
You have to know what you're watching, and you have to match it to a reason, right? A television series is going to, unless it's already, it's going to be finite, and they know how they're getting to their ending. It's going to be a unending serial, like a comic book or this or that. So you're looking at those kind of things, not for a story arc, because the story arc is only the arc of that episode, not the
Right.
longer one, right?
Right.
In a
Right.
film, you're looking at the longer story arc, but you're also looking for the themes, and you're looking for the subtext and all that stuff. And here's how you get good at that. You do this with novels, you do this with film, you read or watch in a genre one or two of the classics,
Mm.
and then watch 5, 10, or 5 to 8 of the disasters. Right? It's not to mock them. It's that once you kind of see how well it's done, you start picking out, hello, one of the other
One of the
members of the
staff
show,
members has come in.
Nunzio, has arrived.
Yes, Nunzio is there. One of the staff members of Seamus Productions, his publishing arc, has come in there.
That
But
was Sonny, our security dog.
yeah,
But he ran away right away because, there might be some movement out in the world, and that's
yes,
not allowed from him.
I believe that's translated to squirrel. Yeah,
Yeah, squirrel.
yeah,
So when you watch something terrible, and you see, you can mock it, then watch it again. Just see why it went, where
exactly,
it went, and
exactly.
you learn to
Deconstruct.
avoid those potholes, right? And then go back and watch another classic, and you say, that's how they did it so well, and you start getting a flavor for it.
Mm-hmm.
Watch babies learning to walk. Read a book about, they take lessons, right? They fall on their butts a while, and then they get used to it. Same thing here. We get good examples, right? The babies look at all the adults walking around. They're doing pretty good, except for Uncle Joe, who seems to be drunk.
Yeah,
But
he stumbles just like me. Yeah,
yeah, look at that.
yeah.
But they learn from watching, observing, and trying. And the same thing here. Read early, read often, read a wide variety of stuff, fiction,
Mm-hmm.
nonfiction. Nonfiction is for information, not for subtext, right? Fiction, that's where you look at all the techniques and all that sort of stuff. And the same thing with your viewing.
And
right?
I would also, just a segue from the subtext, which some of the material that you just mentioned, into the next thing, which is stereotypes.
Yeah.
Again, looking at Little Women, oh, they're women, so women must be X, Y, and Z. No, there are 4 women living in the same house, actually 5 if you count the mom, living in the same house, and they're different human beings.
6.
Oh,
But not Meryl again.
no, Meryl doesn't live in that house.
But she's so important.
Yeah, but you forgot who does live in the house or who does work. Is it I believe they refer to her as Nana because we never mentioned her. It's a lady who comes. Right. But in terms of the family, the March family in that house, there's mom and 4 daughters, and they're 4 different women. And there are moments throughout the film, as in the book, where you realize how they're different. I mean, it's not just the obvious Joe wants to do this and Meg wants to do that. There's subtleties, there are levels, they're supportive of each other, they're at each other's throat. It's all of those things because they're human beings. And once you start to remind yourself with any kind of character that you're working with, that they're a human being. There may be similarities, some cultural similarities or some racial similarities or gender or physical, but the bottom line is they're individuals and you have to deal with that individual so that he or she comes clear through the story. And that's what I feel, again, they did really well, the acting in particular, but also the writing. Again, give it to Gerwig. I really enjoyed the writing within this particular piece.
Yep.
And I will, once it's on DVD or streaming or something, I will watch it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want to use again the examples that we keep going back to. In 1868, you could name a family of forward-thinking females, the March family.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you can do that in 2020. You'd have to come with a more subtle name. But that served as a nice subtext in 1868 because every single one of those women are marching forth in a world that does not want them to, right?
Mm.
Also, in 1868, you can tag each daughter with a different skill. If you did that in 2020, it would seem like the Fantastic Four. It would seem like, right?
Play more, George.
It would seem like what was a hook in 1868 would seem like a stereotype. So, how do you get past the stereotype? The character. You give, and again, it's that character bio that we talked about last week.
Mm-hmm.
The more you know, the more you
develop that human being. Yeah.
Give them a well-rounded personality. And sometimes learning from each other and echoing each other, and sometimes clashing and all that sort of stuff. But it's all about building up those characters and then putting them in the room together. Neil Simon.
Yeah, I was going to say Neil.
He said, just give me two opposing characters, put them in the room, I'll give you a play.
Yeah. And didn't Sorkin say something similar? Aaron Sorkin.
He that's all he wants. He wants a couple of characters in a room, and he's ready to go. And you can see that in all his work. But it's easy to misunderstand that. What he means is fully developed characters. What Neil means is fully developed characters, and then they're gonna express their differences and express the story through dialogue and action. Right?
And conflict. The conflict is key to a good story.
Everything's gonna, if you have like The Odd Couple for Neil Simon, right? Mm-hmm. Two very different characters, putting them in a room together is going to create conflict because they see the world in opposing ways.
Yeah.
If we go back to Little Women, there were sisters that were not only they have different talents that drove them in different ways, but those talents informed the way they saw things,
mm-hmm.
And how they reacted to things. Oops, sorry about that. I'll get back in a second. Get out of here.
We've lost visual here. That's okay, folks. I can still hear you.
Yeah. Where are you, bro?
I don't know.
Come on, bro. Oh, what is this? Wait, I gotta put my glasses on. Come on, let's see, bro. Okay. There you are. We're getting back. We're back. There we go.
There we go.
Some notification came. I tried to get rid of it, and I should just let it go on its own. But, for example, Joe and the artist is Amy. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Joe's a writer, and there's a logic to her. There's a planning. We see in the film physically. We see action when she's writing and planning the pages and all that
mm-hmm.
stuff. We see the orderliness. We see the way she dresses. We see the way she views the world,
mm-hmm.
right? Artistically, but in a very logical, progressive way. Linear, you would almost say. And Amy is an artist and sees it in a nonlinear way, in a visual way, right? And therefore lives her life that way. And because those are different ways of viewing the world, and because she may be the very oldest one. I'd have to check with the goddess.
Yes, she is.
And Amy is the youngest one, and a little spoiled. There's a jealousy from Amy to
Amy.
Joe.
Wait a minute. I think Amy is third.
Okay.
I think Beth is the youngest.
Beth might be the youngest. Yeah, we need the goddess. But the artist and the writer, their whole lives are conflict because of how they see the world and how well developed those characters are. So developing the characters equals creates conflict. Knowing the characters will help you create the conflict, and conflict will help you create the subtext. Goddess, is that you? No, that's your godson, Tyler. Good to see you,
Tyler.
Tyler, what do you got to say about Little Women?
I haven't seen it.
There you go. He's taking the fifth, bro.
right there with a snappy answer.
All right. So by doing all that, by going through the background of your character, you go right past stereotype to unique, right?
Unique individuals, yes.
And that's the work of it, right? This is why writing isn't first draft and done, right? Um, rewriting and rewriting and rewriting. You have to think of writing as oil painting, not water painting, right? Water painting, the first time the brush touches the surface, that stains it in a way that's going to be permanent. Oil painting will stay wet and you can manipulate it, right? Same thing, the difference between, chiseling concrete or molding clay, right?
Mm-hmm.
Writing is the molding, right? You go and bring out the nuance. Knowing the character and doing the work and going for a long walk and listening to the character's songs or thinking about the character or following the background and asking the questions of each character.
Which also affects dialogue, interior dialogue, all of the things that are either spoken or that the character might be going through in his or her head that affect their next action or their next intent.
And that brings us to the last two things for this episode, which is second bananas and interior dialogue versus being able to talk to someone else, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we were going to stick with the Little Women theme, one of the things
we're having such a good time with it. Yeah.
That's right. One of the things that's really cool about Little Women is that everybody takes a turn as a second banana. Everyone's story, when you're focusing on one of the characters, she's the lead of that moment. And whatever other sibling or Lori or whoever's, they are who you're bouncing that story off of. They become that. And because there's a balance to everyone's story, you don't see the second banana-ness of it, But one of the things Alcott does and the movies do is she employs, and the movie filmmakers do as well, both exterior dialogue between characters and interior dialogue when Joe is writing and we hear what she's writing or we hear, that kind of stuff. Again, reading all the time, watching all the time, writing all the time and seeing what works and embracing the beauty and the power of rewriting will get you through these things. Knowing when you need a second banana and knowing when interior dialogue will work and exterior dialogue won't, well, that's part of the process, We've been trying hard not to talk about our own material, but I'll talk about City of Woe for a minute. City of Woe has two detectives, and they have a second banana, right? And one of the things I worked on was to give each of them agency. There was one thing that they had that the other character was lacking, so that together they, also the antagonist starts with the second banana, who is abandons him at a certain point because of the theme that he is doing, right? Underneath all of City of Woe is a modernized echo of Dante's Inferno. So the two detectives serve as each other's, it's Dante and his guide Virgil. So sometimes Mallory is Dante and Gunnar is Virgil, and sometimes Gunnar is Dante and Mallory is Virgil. What happens with the antagonist, if you have the antagonist, you can see him as a Dante, and the Virgil disappears as he goes deeper into the Inferno, because as Dante said, and the reason why Dante made the Inferno or hell narrow as it went down is because he thought sin is an isolating experience. And the further down you get to it, the further down that path of, justified evil or whatever, the more isolated you become. So that's why, so again, it's knowing your characters and knowing where they're going gets you to start working and playing with those things. But the antagonist was not alone in the first 8 or 10 drafts of that novel. It's as I learned the story, and again, it's you got to embrace the rewrites. So,
which you always say, and which is also so true. Whether people get to do 10 or 20 or 2, rewrites are necessary no matter what. And if you're blessed with the opportunity to rework it, not overwork it, but rework it to get it honed to its best version, or
right.
what you can believe and hand in, that's a great thing. But just understand that just writing it, just throwing it out there, that's not the end of the journey. That's not the end of the process. And I think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Full disclosure, when I embarked on that first novel, it's way back down there, the idea was a journey of teaching myself how to write stories, how to write novels. So having gotten trained by screenwriters and novel workshops and all that sort of stuff, I embraced the idea that I wouldn't have a deadline or be putting this to market right away. So that was almost an indulgence on my part. Not all of us have that. You're writing to a deadline, you're not going to be doing 10. So I want to introduce a concept. There's a difference between rewriting and pre-writing. Both are equally important. Pre-writing is when you give yourself time to think about it and to take some notes, and phones have that notepad. You can even
record it
into it now, right?
Yeah.
So that you're working when you're at the gym, or you're working when you're walking the dog, or cooking dinner. You're still working on the character.
Or driving home from work, or whatever. Yeah.
Maybe you create a playlist. Maybe when you look at the news, you look at it and ask yourself, how would this character react to that? How would that character react to that? That doesn't have to be part of your story, but it will be part of your characterization, which begets all the other parts of the story.
It informs you.
Become biblical about the whole thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and interior versus exterior dialogue. There's a reason for that. Write a story that's all interior dialogue, and a couple pages in, you'll learn. There's a burden with that, and it really has to have a reason to use it. And write a whole story, you may not have a plan to go anywhere. All right, I'm going to write 3 pages, purely dialogue, and each character has to be different, and just 2 people. And can I sustain interest for 3 pages, and build it from an introduction to an ending without, telegraphing things, without having to show, without having to tell rather than show, with minimal narrative description, just the conversation. And, you learn a lot of intent and what works and doesn't work. And it's great. It's a really fruitful exercise. Give yourself the time to teach yourself in that way.
I think it's a good place for us to put down the pencil, for the day, right? Drop the mic, boom. But again, I hope those of you who are who listen to us on a regular basis or drop by often, note again that we tend to, as Chris was just saying, we sometimes try not to talk about our own stuff, but whatever we're talking about, it is always about serving the story. And we can just as easily have these kinds of dialogues and discussions about action, adventure, sci-fi or whatever, as well as drama, romance, whether it's into the future or back into the past. A good story is a good story. There are certain goals you go for to achieve that. And what we try to bring out here is what, as we see it, and what those that we respect as writers and creators see as those goals. And one of them is, again, being true to the story, right to be true to the story, whether it's a script, screenplay, or a novel, but also know your characters so that they come alive on those pages or on that screen, and people can sit and, like we did, and talk about how that story moved us or affected us.
And that's how you
tell the damn story.
Indeed.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. As always, please leave a comment, questions. If you agree or disagree, throw that in there. We're cool with that. We always love to hear from you, and I hope you continue to love to hear from us. Chris, as always, thank you, bro.
Thank you, brother. Peace, everyone.
Peace, everybody. And